Hi everyone, it's Dove again. So in this video I thought I would show you how I make my anti-itch spray, which is what I use during the summer mostly because of mosquito bites and chigger bites and flea bites and whatever kind of bites. And it's also something that my ex-husband uses when he gets poison ivy because it helps dry it out really quickly. And it's actually an alcohol-based tincture. You can make tinctures with like glycerin and stuff, but this is alcohol-based, and I put it in little spray bottles here. And so whenever I get a mosquito bite, I spray the mosquito bite. I have really bad reactions to mosquito bites. They'll well up or welt up pretty big on me, and they itch and they itch, and it's just so bad. And I'm not allergic to mosquito bites, but I am very, very sensitive to them. And so I had to come up with this anti-itch spray so that I wasn't like tearing into myself, because if I don't do anything about mosquito bites, it's horrible. It gets very, very bad. They start bleeding and stuff because I itch them like crazy. And so since I make all these other personal care products, I decided to come up with an anti-itch spray. And so basically it's herbs and alcohol, and I also put witch hazel extract in it, which is an antiseptic, or excuse me, an astringent, and it helps with the itching that comes with mosquito bites and stuff. And I get that from Mountain Rose Herbs, and I get all organic ingredients whenever possible. All of these herbs and everything are organic. I use 14 different herbs and flowers. You know, they're leaves and flowers. I don't use any roots or barks or berries. They're all either leaves or flowers, and they're all dried. And I can't give you my recipe. I can tell you what to look for. I'll tell you how to research the different herbs that you need to look for when you're making an anti-itch spray, but because it's kind of a small business of mine, I can't actually give you the whole recipe. It's like giving away the KFC spices, you know what I mean? But this is the last one. I will tell you, one of them I use is yarrow flower, and I get that from Mountain Rose Herbs. They have all certified organic and natural herbs and spices. I really love Mountain Rose Herbs. They're out in Oregon as well. And I buy everything in bulk because it's much, much cheaper, and that way every time I want to make a batch of this, I don't have to go out and buy a whole bag, because most of the time the smallest bag you can get in bulk is 4 ounces, and I only use 5 grams at a time when I'm making this. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to just keep buying it every time. So I actually have a great big bin of flowers and leaves and roots and berries and everything that I just keep with me, and that's what I use to make all my personal care products. But I've already measured out most of them, and you can kind of see the different layering. And so in the description box I'll type in the amounts that I used and everything, because I know I'm probably going to forget something while I'm talking here. But basically there's 14 different herbs here, and I used 5 grams of each. Except for one of them, I only used 3 grams. And so in total, it was 68 grams of dried plant material. And I am using organic 190 proof alcohol. And I get it from a place called Alchemaic Solutions in Oregon. This is cane sugar alcohol, but they have alcohol made from corn and grapes and a few other different grains and stuff, and they're all different prices. I think this was on the lower end. I think this is why I chose this. It's a big 5-gallon container, because this is what I use for all of my tinctures. and my hand sanitizers and everything. And so it was really expensive, and you can't always get it in every state. Your state may restrict you. And so if you cannot get this, or if you're not interested in spending that much money on certified organic, just get some Everclear, because that's basically the same thing. You're just looking for the 190 proof. And then the witch hazel that I use is, again, from Mountain Rose Herbs, and it is 86, let me check my notes here, hold on. Yeah, it's made with 86% witch hazel and 14% alcohol, organic alcohol. And so you can find different witch hazels on the market, but they might have a lot more alcohol in them. I just like the witch hazel from Mountain Rose Herbs because it's one of the better ones that I've been able to find. Okay, I'm going to say a lot. And so what I've got here is 16 ounces of the alcohol, and I will use 12 ounces of the witch hazel. And this is the old bottle that I have, and there's only like 4 ounces left. And so I will open this new bottle to make up for that. And so I've got my herbs here, and this is my little scale that I use. And it's called AC Pro 200. It does not do ounces, but it does grams. And so for my purposes, because I use such little amounts, this is what I use to measure it out. And I put my bowl right there on the scale before I turn it on. And that way it won't recognize that bowl there. So when you take it off, it goes in the negative. But if you forget and you don't do that, go off, buddy. If you turn it on before you put your bowl on there, that's what this little tare button's for. And so if you already have it on and you put your bowl on there, you don't want to include that weight in your measurement. You want to start it at 0, and so you push the tare button and it will tear out. This is a really cheap little scale, and I'm on a kind of an uneven, this is a really old table. And so I have to push the tare button a few times. It's really not agreeing with me at all right now. Buy a better scale, that's all I have to say. It's really finicky. This was only like, $20 or something like that. Now it's not going to work. Okay, there we go. Don't touch it. Okay, so I'm just going to show you. I'm going to set the camera down, and that's what I'll do is I'll have this scale on, and then I'm going to add 5 grams of the yarrow, and that will finish me off on my herbs. And then I'll add the alcohol and the witch hazel. Oh, the light just came on. I have a ghost light over there. It comes on just when it wants to. And because I'm just going to make this one video. Thankfully, I have a little bit of the tincture left over from my last batch back in 2019. And so I can show you what it looks like. It gets very, very dark. Very dark. And if you have light skin, like I do, when you use it, because it's good, I have to say it's very good, but you do have to use it a few times. Like for me, I mean, I have to use it more than my friends do because I am really sensitive to mosquito bites, and so they may only have to use it once or twice on a mosquito bite. But if it's a really big bad mosquito that my body doesn't like, I might have to spray it like 5 times. And so what I do is I spray it once and I let it dry, and if it's still itching, I spray it again and I let it dry, and if it's still itching, I do it. And so I repeat until it stops itching, and sometimes it can be up to 4 or 5 times because I am so extremely sensitive to mosquitoes. And because my skin is so light, and this is really a very dark tincture, it will actually leave a brown spot. Yeah, I'm still dealing with that stupid psoriasis, if you can't see that. But yeah, it will leave like a dark circle. I can't show you now because I haven't used it because it's not summer yet. I try to start this ahead of time in the spring because it takes a month to tincture. Once I add the alcohol and everything to this, I will let this sit for 1 month, and I shake it every day, just once a day. I have this lid. This is a 32 ounce quart jar, canning jar. I use these canning jars for everything. And this is just the lids that it comes with. This is a new lid, but it's an old ring. You can reuse the rings, but when you're doing something new, you need to have the new lid. It's the 2-piece canning jars. And I put a little label on there, and I put the day that I start it so that I can keep track of it. And so I'll put the alcohol in there, and I'll put the lid on, and then once a day I'll just give it a good shake from end to end, and I'll, you know, because you don't want to just let it sitting there. You want to actually give it a little bit of action to it. So hold on a second, I will set you down and reposition the camera and everything. Hold on. Alright, so like I said, this is the last one that I have to measure out. It's the yarrow. So it's the 14th herb that I have. You can use, so I'm going to turn the scale on. I've got the bowl sitting on the scale, and I'm going to turn it on, and it's reading at 0 grams. And I use 5 grams each, except for that one, I use only 3 grams. I went way over there on there. So it's at 632, so I'm going to dump some back out. Whoops, I went under again. Try to go slow because it takes a while for these cheap little things to register. And this is actually at 531 grams, 5.31, but I'm going to leave it alone because I don't care. Sometimes I go over and I don't care. But you can use any combination of the herbs that you want, and it doesn't have to be 14 different ones. If you find like 4 or 5 different ones that you like, then just stick with those. And what you want to look for, turn that off when I'm done. So what you want to look for with the herbs is, I'll put in the description box like the exact search terms that you want to use, but you want to do a search for herbs, comma, topical, comma, and then after that it'll be open-ended. So the first search that you do would be anti-inflammatory. So you want to look for herbs that are anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, analgesic, and antihistamine. And so I've got all my herbs in there, and I do this in a pot because with these measuring cups sometimes they spill out the bottom, and I don't want to waste any of this. This is extremely expensive alcohol. I guess I wouldn't mind as much if I wasted some Everclear, but even Everclear is not cheap. But this is probably 5 times as much as Everclear, so I don't want to waste any. And that the camera probably showed that. I just spilled right into there. So I'm going to recapture that here in a minute. So that was the alcohol. That was 16 ounces of the 190 proof alcohol. And then I need 12 ounces of the witch hazel. But yeah, you want to look for herbs that are anti-inflammatory, obviously, antiseptic, analgesic, which means pain relieving, and antihistamine, which is like an itch relief. That's like Benadryl and stuff. That's what Benadryl is. It's an antihistamine. And so I'm going to go to 12 ounces on the witch hazel. And again, keeping it inside my pan here. And I just barely have enough room. And actually, I'm only doing this in a quart jar because that's what most people have. I have, this is 32 ounces. I have a 64 ounce canning jar that I would actually like to use, but most people don't have that big of a canning jar. And so I wanted to show you that you can do it in a quart jar. But ideally you would want to have more room, because you have to shake this every day and give it some agitation, and it is right up to the top. But most people probably don't even need this much at one time. This, I will lose quite a bit of this liquid. I actually lose almost half of it. I have to look at my recipe, but yeah, I start with 16 ounces of alcohol and 12 ounces of witch hazel, and at the end of a month I only have 19 ounces of fluid left, because after you strain this, those herbs are going to hold on to a lot of that liquid, and that's just a loss that you have to deal with. There's really nothing you can do about it. You're just going to lose that liquid, and it's very unfortunate, but that's just part of making a tincture of any kind. Whether you're making an infusion or a tincture or anything, and no matter whether you're using alcohol as the base, or water or oil, you're always going to lose some of that fluid, because the herbs will hold on to it and they're not going to release it. And so I put that on pretty tight, and then I give it a good shake. And see, as long as it's still fluid and moving around, I'm not sure how well you can see that. Let me try to flip this around for us. But yeah, it's full to the top. But you can cut the recipe in half. I mean, maybe you don't need 19 ounces, but I give probably, you know, a third of this away to my best friend, who is also my hairdresser. Hi, Angie. And so you just want to do this every day from end to end. You want to give it a good shake. That way you've got the agitation going, and then you've got time. So you're going to let it sit for a month, shaking it every day, and that will give you a really good tincture at the end. And so I'm not going to show it, but I think you guys all know, if you're watching this and you're actually making any kind of tincture, you know that you have to strain it. And so I have a strainer that I will set over a big measuring cup, and then I will line the strainer with what's called butter muslin. And I don't really want to do a lot of editing with this, so I'm going to go over here. I'm going to leave the camera so that I can show you this butter muslin. Now I'm in the way. And I get this from Cultures for Health, but you could probably find it elsewhere. Cultures for Health does butter making and cheese making and stuff. And so this is basically cheesecloth, which with a much tighter weave, because I find that cheesecloth, it leaves too much sediment in there, and with this tighter weave, very little sediment gets through. And I use like a double layer, and so it's actually really nice when you're trying to do tinctures and stuff. You could use like a quadruple or whatever layer of cheesecloth, but I find it easier and better just to use the butter muslin because it's a tighter weave. Okay guys, so I think that's all I wanted to show you. Make sure you shake it every day, and if it leaks like that, put your lid back on better because now it's starting to leak. Let me set you down. See, this is what happens. This is real life here. I've got a little bit of a leak. And I've actually had to put 2 lids on here before. I know that sounds weird, but I've had to do that before. I've had to put 2 lids on there. I don't know why this is leaking. I must not have had it down good enough. Oh, I do. Oh, look at that, you guys. Ooh, see? This is a brand new lid even. I don't know if you can see that or not. You're not going to be able to see that. Hold on. I didn't even notice this. I swear to God, this was brand new. Where is it? There it is. Do you see that? It's bent. I just got this out of the box. I'm going to have to complain to Ball. Look at that. Do you see that? It's bent. So make sure your canning lid's good, apparently. Because that's what happens. If your canning lid is off at all, it will leak. So, darn it. Hold on. I am going to go get a new lid. Okay, so the lesson of the day is check your canning lid before you use it. So I went and I got a new one. And I inspected it, and there's no... It's not dented or anything. I really don't know. I mean, Ball is usually much better with their quality control than that. I'm not quite sure how that got snuck through. But these labels, they're removable, and so I can easily take that off and put it on the new one. And if you don't have labels, you can just take a permanent marker and write on there what it is and what date you started with. But just be aware that if you get any alcohol on that permanent marker, it's actually not permanent. Alcohol will take permanent marker off of a canning lid. So just be aware of that. That's why I would rather have the labels. I'm glad that happened, because that's something that you really should pay attention to, and I didn't do it this time. So that was my bad. But I'm glad I did my bad, because that's a lesson learned for you. Always check your canning lids and make sure they're not dented in or in any way deformed. And I don't know if you saw that. If you're familiar with canning jars, you'll know that sometimes when you put the ring on, it doesn't always want to go on when you're turning it. And so sometimes if you turn it clockwise, it will help like reseat it, and then you can spin it on. Just make sure it's centered and on there tight, because that should never happen. If you have a leak, there's something wrong. So always inspect your lids. And sometime, you know, in the middle of the month, if that lid is getting funky or whatever, just replace it. You might go through a couple lids, but these are cheap, and so it doesn't really matter. So go ahead and shake it again, and do that every day from end to end. Give it a good shake every day, and then shake it down. And then when you're done, strain it through with your butter muslin. And again, I got a 19-ounce yield from that, and I just store it in another canning jar. This is a wide mouth canning jar, and this is a narrow mouth canning jar. You might not be able to see the difference too much, but when the tincture's done, I just store it in the narrow mouth, or a regular mouth. It's just called a regular mouth, and it's also a quart jar. And then I just pour it. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. I pour it into these little spray bottles. It's not going to focus. I'm sorry, it's not focusing. But yeah, I just pour it into that. Oh, and I can't forget the main ingredient. Well, it's not the main ingredient. This by itself is actually pretty good. And, you know, I've been making this for several years. And for the first few years, this is all I did. And then I actually found that if I add menthol crystals to it after I strain it, I don't know what struck me, but it just, something about it dawned on me, and I had the menthol crystals already in my arsenal. And so when I'm done with this and I strain it out, to that 19 ounces of tincture, I add 4 tablespoons of menthol crystals, and that gives it a nice tingly, it just helps with the itch. It really helps. This is okay by itself, but I noticed that when I added that menthol, it just bumped up the game a little bit, you know, and made it so that it worked faster and a little bit better. So I do recommend, if you can find menthol crystals, again, I got those from Mountain Rose Herbs. They're in a box over there, and I'm not going to go dig them out now, but just go to Mountain Rose Herbs and search for menthol crystals. They're these just little tiny white crystals, and when you open the bag, you're going to get hit with a whiff of menthol, but it does help out. And so that's it. And when you're done, it will look nice and dark like this. And if you have a tan, if you're a white girl like me with really pale skin, you're going to have brown splotches when you use it. But if you have a tan, or if you have darker skin, you won't be able to tell at all. I mean, you just won't be able to tell. And so usually later in the summer, when I have a little bit of tan on me, when I use it, it doesn't really show up. But otherwise, it is kind of unsightly. But once you do this and you let it sit and work, it actually, you know, 2 hours later, my mosquito bite, you can't even tell I got a mosquito bite. Whereas if I didn't use anything, it would be probably that big bite in 2 hours. It would be so bad that I wouldn't be able to stand it. But in 2 or 3 hours after using this, it's gone. You can't even tell that there was a bump there. But you'll see the little brown circle of the tincture. And so I just take a wet paper towel or a baby wipe and I wipe it off, and it's gone, and you can't even tell I had a mosquito bite. Whereas, you know, if I wasn't using this, you know, in 2 days after a mosquito bite, it would be red and bleeding and just absolutely horrible. So I'm really glad I designed this and started using it, because, you know, it was either this or you know, calamine lotion, because calamine lotion works too. So but that's it. That's how I make my anti-itch spray, guys. I just thought I would share that with you. Hopefully I didn't bore you too long or too much. Talk to you later. Bye.